Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Hello and welcome back. Tim and Julie Harris. Harris US Tour 2021.
Indeed.
And we are going to skip the travel log today. And we'll talk more about our experience in Jackson Hole tomorrow.
Once we get more settled and have more to tell you about.
Right. We want to finish the topic that we started on the second half of the show yesterday, where we were talking about an article that came out about EXP Realty, but more specifically EXPI. This is an article, or this is a podcast topic, judging by the number of downloads, that has piqued a lot of your interest. And so we're going to stay on this, and I think probably we'll get through this rather long article by the end of the by tomorrow's show.
I believe
but
so.
I will. We are going to include a link to the original article that was written by a guy that's basically a financial analyst. He is one of these financial money guys. He's not in real estate. He's not a real estate broker. He's not anybody who's going to be
He wasn't a founder of EXP.
Right, exactly.
Nothing like that.
And matter of fact, I only found out about this article because one of our coaching clients and an agent at EXP shared it with me.
Oh, I was going to ask you that.
Michael Zawalski. And
Okay.
so this particular article I thought was, and I think you've read it three times.
I think it's great.
And it explains a lot of the things that I think a lot of people are confused about EXP Realty. And if in case you're listening to this as our first podcast, this is Real Estate Coaching Radio. Julie and I are on the road for 2 months, and we're doing our podcasts from the car, from hotel rooms. And this is not normally what we talk about on our podcast, but what we're doing is we're visiting 20 different states. We're visiting the towns where we have coaching clients. We're boots on the ground. We're seeing what's happened as a result of COVID. We're essentially observers in all these little beautiful towns and cities where we have so many wonderful coaching clients and friends and family members. And so we're traveling all over God's green earth. And
Indeed.
Even though we're questioning our sanity, to be honest with you, I mean, on more than one occasion, we are traveling without a plan. We only have we only had 2 firm dates. One was the 6th of July when the plane landed in Dallas, and the other is basically going to happen in about 20 days in Central California. We're going to be at Monterey for Car Week. So if any of you guys or gals are car nerds like Julie and I are, please do consider spending time with us at Car Week.
Yes, and if you are traveling to Car Week, the clock is ticking. Get your reservations because it's basically in 1 month from now.
Well, actually, and so where we're going after Jackson Hole, we have no idea.
Yes. But we do know that we'll be in the Monterey Peninsula starting roughly August 10th, give or take.
But I will tell you this, and Julie and I, we thought this was going to be a problem, but we didn't realize how much of a problem it was going to be. People are absolutely traveling.
Oh, yeah.
Everything is booked. There's waits to get on. I mean, when we were in Estes Park, there was like a 2-hour wait to get on the tram. I mean,
you couldn't even get into, Rocky Mountain National Park without a reservation.
You needed a reservation to get into a national park. We pulled up and the pleasant gal said, "Do you have a reservation?" Nope, there's the turnaround.
Yeah, so don't procrastinate. If you guys really want to get out this summer and you're feeling exhausted from all the COVID lockdowns, you need to get really proactive about that.
And don't do it like we're doing it.
Yeah.
Is that what we're trying to politely say?
Kind of.
Yeah, so, I mean, Julie's getting a lot of...
It's all working out, but, if you're a planner type, you would be frustrated.
So you're saying you're frustrated?
Yeah, well,
Well, we're finding hotel rooms. But we did mentally prepare to sleep in the car if we had to.
Indeed, which we're not going to do.
No, I don't think we're as rugged as we thought we were.
No, but, you do. I think there is something to learning how to strategize between VRBO and HomeAway and Travelocity and TripAdvisor and all these things. Because we literally have seen reservations disappear while we were setting them up.
Yeah.
That's how busy the travel is right now.
Well, when we were booking Jackson Hole, Julie was poking through looking at the pictures, and it said when we started on there, there were 4 reservations left. And then when basically she clicked off to see, check the dates, there was 1 reservation left. And it was like what they do, what these hotels do is they price dynamically. So it's like Amazon does this as well. I've seen our book, Harris Rules, which continues to be a bestseller on Amazon. That book has been for sale sometimes sometimes for $8. And then depending on your own buying habits on Amazon, it could be for sale for as much as $20, which is crazy. And hotel tickets and plane flights work the same way. So based on your own buying patterns and also the amount of supply they have, they will jack the heck up on prices.
Yeah, they do. I've actually seen like 3 rooms are available, then one will get booked, and then the previous pricing of the available 2 goes up within 5 or 10 minutes. And then another one disappears, and you can watch it happening right before your eyes. So you got to get cracking on this stuff.
Yeah,
guys.
and do get out and travel, because it is something. There is absolutely a celebration going on across the country and all the places we've been, where people are overtly demonstrative about their wanting to interact with other humans.
Yes.
Even in some of the communities we've gone through where people are still masking up, you can see that people are rejoicing in having the pandemic behind us, which, that makes sense, right?
Totally. So get out there, guys.
So we're picking up where we left off yesterday. And yesterday we were talking about, again, this article that we stumbled across about EXP. And listen to this with open ears, open mind. And then I think what you'll soon discover is a lot of you are going to have more than a passive interest in joining EXP. Now, please do not confuse what our motivation is for wanting to do this podcast. Julie and I originally got involved with EXP because of the fact that we were perfectly in alignment with EXP's mission as far as being of service to agents, and they with us. And I had never Julie and I had always hoped to find a national brokerage that we could refer agents to. Prior to EXP, when someone said, well, who should I join, which was probably one of our top 3 questions. I mean, we have a huge coaching company. We'd always say, well, join whichever one's the most convenient and the nearest to you. We did not really spend a lot of time educating on agents how to choose a brokerage, because at the end of the day, I mean, we've done podcasts about it, but at the end of the day, most of the brokerages were the same until EXP. EXP has changed all the rules, created a completely different set of business opportunities for agents, and to not pay attention to it because you have a bias this way or that is missing what could be one of the greatest changes in your life from a financial perspective, but also from a cultural and educational perspective.
That's right. So if you missed our ramp up to this, make sure you get caught up on yesterday's podcast. This is part 2 about this topic. So we talked a little bit about, everybody always asks about commissions. So we talked about that yesterday. We're going to not redo that today. The next part of this is the power of incentives. And this article actually calls it the superpower of incentives. This investor says, let me step back and talk about incentives. I will explain exactly why EXPI, that's the stock, has been growing hand over fist and will continue to do so. This is very important. We humans have a hard time comprehending how powerful incentives can be. Perhaps the most important job of a company's leadership team is to get the incentives right and then get the hell out of the way. This is what he says. And then he quotes Charlie Munger.
But this goes back to what you and I have been experienced being, in our industry. We've been coaching agents for over 20 years, and they ask us which brokerage to join, and we'd always say it doesn't really. I mean, we think really doesn't make much of a difference because essentially they're all offering the same thing.
Until now, it didn't.
Until now, and that's the point that this investor guy is making. And remember, he's not associated with EXP. He does disclose he is buying shares. He is thinking that this is going to be one of his biggest, essentially best long-term investments. He's saying he has a 5-year projection. And he's projecting that the stock is going to basically triple in value.
Sure.
But again, not an agent, not a brokerage, no ownership other than owning equity in the company. So when he's going through these points, understand that this is coming from a professional money manager investor, not some agent that's trying to recruit you.
That's right. So he was quoting,
not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, exactly right. So he and sorry, EXP agents, if we're preaching to the choir, you guys need to pay attention too, so that you can best explain why you joined. I think Julie, this makes some great points.
Again, that's fantastic point. So Julie and I we didn't join EXP. Julie didn't move her license there until January of 2019. Mm-hmm. Okay, prior to that, we had been solicited constantly to join EXP, but we were solicited poorly. And that's
Correct.
The only way of being on it. That's the way of saying it. In other words, the people that were trying to get us to join EXP did not explain the value proposition even halfway as decent as this article that we're reading to you. Had we understood, or had we actually been presented with what an incredible genius idea that Glenn Sanford came up with, who founded EXPI, had we been explained that correctly the first time, say back in 2009 or 2010, we would have absolutely aligned to that.
Way sooner, probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, get the message straight, basically. So this investor is quoting Charlie Munger, who said, this is Munger speaking, I place reward and punishment super response. This is a quote from him. The tendency first in my discussion, because almost everyone thinks that they fully recognize how important incentives and disincentives are in changing cognition and behavior. But this is not often so. I think I've been in the top 5% of my age cohort most of my adult life in understanding the power of incentives, and yet I've always underestimated that power. Never a year passes, but I get some surprise that pushes a little further my appreciation of incentive superpower. So, why are we talking about incentives? I want you guys to ask yourselves, are you currently getting this at your brokerage? He explains that EXPI understands the superpower of incentives. EXP has all the 6 core attributes that create a win-win additive sum games. Now, this is very wonkish. I really liked this because I never had somebody lay out the 6 core attributes that create that win-win situation. This is more of an economic and investment brain versus how we all think as agents and brokers and coaches, right?
But this is what
that's what I liked about it.
His 6 points he's about to make, most agents don't really understand all 6 of these points until after they've joined EXP.
Right, because then it happens to them.
And then they stumble across them and
Yeah.
they go, what do you mean I got stock awards? What do you mean this is happening?
I know.
What's this money?
Well, it's a different model. So.
I've had agents that we've sponsored EXP receive revenue share, message me about it, and ask what the revenue share was for, and then I would say, well, didn't you didn't you sponsor 5 or 6 agents at EXP? Yes. Well, now they're selling real estate, and you're getting a portion of the revenue that they generated.
That they pay to the company, that
Right.
the company dollar then flows to you.
Right, and so these I've had on many occasions where agents thought it was an overpayment of commission, and they're wondering.
Right, isn't that funny?
It is. They're thinking that they had to return the money to EXP. They
Yeah.
didn't realize it was actually they were getting paid
I
for the
know.
revenue from the agents that they sponsored.
It's amazing. And tomorrow, on tomorrow's show, we're going to do some very specific math and compare so that they see the impact of that. Okay, so what are the 6 things? What are those? What does he call this? Incentive structure. So again, you guys might want to take some notes on this. 6 things. Well, first one, it has to be simple. Every incentive plan needs to be simple enough that everyone can understand. EXPI checks this box. So there's 3 little subpoints. 80% commission, 100% after $16,000 cap. That's pretty easy to understand, right? Okay, so stock awards for hitting milestones. Okay, I get that. A lot of agents, to your point, don't really take that seriously because they've never been awarded stock.
Let's go back to your first point, though. And this
Okay.
is a conversation you and I have had probably 15 trillion times.
Yeah.
An agent will say, well, I'm on a 90-10 split, EXP's on an 80-20 split, or I'm on an 85-5 or whatever
Sure.
the heck I'm on. My split's better at wherever I am versus at EXP. And then this is all you have to say. Okay, so what is the royalty or whatever the fancy name for it
Yeah.
is off every transaction? And it's say, well, I got a great deal on that. That's 6%. So your commission split isn't really 90-10, is it? It's 90-10 minus another 6%.
After you've paid your 6%.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's not 90, it's 90-10 the commission split, and then you have to pay another,
Right.
6%. So you're actually on 84%
Which
split.
strangely they never count.
Right.
I don't know why that is.
Or they'll say, well, my commission split's the same, or my commission split's better, and then I'll say, well, what's your cap? And they'll say, what's a cap? Well, so you're on your 90-10 forever, where you're paying you're 10% to the
That's
broker.
like the best you'll ever do.
Plus 6% to what, the franchise fee or whatever it is. And you never stop paying that commission split no matter how much money you earn. In other words, with a cap is you paying your $16,000 to EXP. After that, you're 100%. You earn $10,000. You're pocketing effectively $10,000 after
Exactly.
you capped.
Yes, and thank you for drilling down on that because you're right, they don't get that necessarily. Okay, so point number 2, stock awards for hitting milestones. Another misunderstood thing. An award is a gift. It is given to you.
Right.
Okay.
We don't have to be so close to the mics because we're not in the car.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Point number 3, micro point number 3, revenue share for attracting talent. Keller Williams, on the other hand, has profit share. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. In theory, profit share should be good, but it's full of smoke and mirrors because of overhead costs that vary from franchise to franchise and month to month.
His words, not ours.
That's right. Okay, so the first point was the incentive plan has to be simple. Point number 2, it has to be significant. The incentive needs to move the needle to make it worthwhile. EXPI checks this box. Micro points, commission split is life-changing from traditional brokers that were usually 50 to 20% and $250 per transaction after the cap. So he's saying it is significant, hundreds of dollars in stock for reaching attainable goals. These are realistic goals. And that's $16,000 in stock for selling, usually for most agents, 30 to 40 houses.
Let me talk
significantly moves that needle.
And he doesn't mind me using his name. And he's in Wilson, North Carolina, Chuck Williamson.
Yep.
And Chuck is Absolutely one of the best prototypical Tim and Julie Harris coaching clients ever.
Yes.
Uses our scripts. I remember when I started coaching him, he'd been listening to the podcast and picking up breadcrumbs and sort of done a basically half-assed job of using our scripts. But he was still doing fantastic because he's got great drive. And as soon as he got the scripts locked in, the listing presentation, the pre-listing pack, all the things they learn as our coaching clients, and then his business went through the roof. But here's the thing. He did not want to leave the brokerage he was with.
I remember.
And I hardly ever bring it up on our coaching calls, right? And he would be like, well, Tim, don't ever talk to me about that EXP thing. I know you and Julie are involved with EXP, but please talk to me about that someday, just not today. And so what I did is 1 year passed to another, and I asked him to send me all of the accounting that his, the spreadsheet. And he's a great business person. I'm not in any way taking anything away from Chuck. He's a really brilliant guy. Absolutely a great guy. So he then sends me a spreadsheet, and then he had basically, it was, very well done, expenses, da-da-da-da. What he did not figure out on his spreadsheet is how much money he had paid to his real estate broker. He had what he had made from the real estate brokerage, what he was paid after the broker's expenses, then minus his fees. And he ran a very, very profitable business because he only had one assistant. He runs a business
and he
like
knew his
we
numbers.
did.
He didn't just throw that together.
Right. And he's not buying business. No. He didn't even, this is the same guy I use as an example on our podcast, as a great example of someone who can be incredibly successful and literally not know how to use social networking. He didn't even know how to log in.
And doesn't have a team.
He didn't know how to log into Facebook, so I had to show him. All right, so if you so then what happened is that I then figured out his math. I said, Chuck, would you send me please a list of all the houses you sold with what the commissions were? And he did, and he had that on a different spreadsheet. It was not part of his same spreadsheet. I sent him the numbers, and then basically the numbers played out that he'd paid his broker over $300,000. He did not realize he'd paid his broker over $300,000 in commission split. And that was just in the previous year. And he'd been with this brokerage, I honestly don't remember in how many years. I think it was at least 5. And then we guesstimated how much money he had paid his real estate broker over that time, and it was over $1 million. And then all I had to do was show him how much money he would have paid EXP last year. And the total was basically $16,000, but in essence, nothing, because he would pay his cap by essentially the end of the first month every year, and he would get the cap back through the ICON program through basically in the form of EXPI stock. So effectively, Chuck Williamson went from essentially fighting not to want to hear anything about EXP to fighting to want to hear more about EXP. He joined. First year, he not only does he essentially save over $300,000 that he would have paid to his previous brokerage, but then he also gets the $16,000 back in EXPI stock, and the EXPI stock went through the roof as far as what the value was.
He did have pretty good timing on that.
Yeah, his timing was great.
Yeah.
I mean, he did. He basically had all this equity from, I think he had 2 years or a year and a half. No, he capped twice. And so he had a whole bunch of the EXPI stock, and then it basically doubled in value. I think he capped twice.
Now, did he have to change how he was doing business
Nothing.
at all?
He didn't change anything.
He just basically, he did all of that, doing what he already does.
Well. Because, and that was another one of his concerns. Tim, I mean, I can hear his accent because he's got a very deep Southern sounding voice. And he would say, Tim, in my small town, he was in Wilson, North Carolina. It matters which brokerage you're with. The locals here, they really care about that and whatever. And I said, Chuck, when are people choosing you as their listing agent because of the brokerage you're with or because of you? And he conceded that they're choosing him because of him. I mean, of course it is. And that's the same way with all of you. New agents don't get confused about that. Nobody cares what brokerage you're with. Now, maybe 30 years ago they would have, but now they don't. And they don't now because essentially people's attachment to major brands has completely eroded. People that are older than Julie and I, they still are brand loyal. They'll only buy this specific kind of car. I mean, I remember Julie's grandparents, they'd only buy Fords, right? That kind of thing. That does not exist anymore.
Well, especially after they saw your face on the Zoom screen during COVID. That was not your broker logging on.
Right.
They didn't do any of that. It was you who was taking good care of
So
them.
people choose the agent that they're going to work with. They're not choosing the brokerage. That is the way it works in real life.
And I think Chuck's proven that. He didn't lose any
Well,
business
it's not just
from
Chuck.
that.
It's
it's just since we're using him as an example.
Right. Oh, yeah.
He kept doing what he was doing.
Well, his business actually took off after he left, because what happened was, getting back to Charlie Munger's points, Chuck was able to actually have more of an incentive to actually produce more sales and create more revenue because he was keeping all of his money. So now before he maybe was a little bit, I've earned enough money and now he sees when he sells something, that's going right to the bucket that allows him to buy more rental properties. He bought a beautiful lake house last year.
Buy more EXPI stock.
Yeah. Did I tell you he wants to cabin swap with us? He wants to stay in Murphy if we can stay in his place in and wherever his lake is. Yeah.
That sounds good to me.
Any event, so there's tens of thousands of stories like this now. And maybe the next story that we're going to be sharing on this podcast is your story.
That's right. So again, we're talking about timely. The incentive has to be immediate. Revenue share is given monthly based on fully automated internal systems specifically audited by Deloitte. Again, talking from an investor standpoint, this is all legit, monthly, and recurring. Okay, so the third point is it has to be certain. He looks at it from two different standpoints in terms of incentives. It can't be gamed by the payer and can't be gamed by the payee. So what does that mean? Non-gameable by payer, what's the point of trying if the reward is uncertain? EXPI makes sure that it's certain. How is that? It's cheat-proof. EXPI checks that box. Transactions have to be made for EXPI to pay commission, grant stock awards, and pay out revenue share. It's very clear. The revenue share pool is entirely made up of EXP's share of the agent commission pool. So there's no Mickey Mouse to it. It's all,
So EXP agents, this is how transparent it is. You can log in to, it's called My EXP as an EXP agent, and you can actually have full transparency about everything that's going on. So for example, if you have, 300 people in your revenue share group, you sponsored 10 people, 40% of those people sponsored somebody, 40% of them, and then maybe, a year passes, a year and a half passes, you have 300 people, you can log in and you can see what those people are selling. You can see what percent of that revenue that they're creating is going to your revenue share.
Total transparency.
Total and complete transparency. EXP shows you everything. There's nothing hiding. You don't have to go and ask for a special report or file some, request with Sally and hoping Sally.
They don't say, that's not available to you because you're not at, the executive level or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's all good. So then the last point he makes is to share the wealth. The reward pool must be earned as a group. EXPI checks this one too. Stock provides an opportunity for all agents to think like EXPI owners. Revenue share paid by EXPI, this is the key. It means that both the sponsor and the sponsored win with more transactions. He says EXPI isn't for everyone. This is a good thing. It's geared towards attracting great realtors. Get them to go all in, and you better watch out. And so he goes on to compare. We'll do some math comparisons tomorrow. But I wanted to go through his points about the 6 things about incentives, because I think that that's a little bit out of the box thinking for most agents and brokers.
Because what is the old story, the old conversation was, what are you paying your broker? I mean, that really was the conversation since the beginning of time, right? And now it's basically, what is your broker paying you? And that's the conversation that many brokerages cannot have because they have no structure set in place to essentially create multiple streams of income for real estate agents, for their agents. So it used to be, I'm working for this broker and I'm on this and or that split. Now it's I'm working for I'm an owner of EXP because EXPI shares you obviously get, and we discussed that yesterday. So you become an owner. So those of you who want to start a brokerage, why don't you just join EXP and basically start a brokerage through EXP? In essence, you're getting the same benefit.
Well, speaking of which, here's another thing that comes up. Agents, and especially brokers who have worked really hard on establishing themselves and have spent some money on their signs and their brand and their this and their that, right?
It's a good point.
So, sometimes when you switch brokers in the past, you felt like you sort of had to sell your soul away and change all of your brand and your colors and your logos and your cards and everything. But this is one of the things I'm really impressed with EXP is that they don't make you change any of that.
Well, so if Julie and I had, which we were never crazy enough to do this actually.
No.
But if Julie and I had Tim and Julie Harris Real Estate, right? And maybe Julie and I have been doing it for decades and it had been something we poured our heart and our soul and probably all of our profit into, right?
Right.
And this was we had this great location. We had this sign, the logo. We sponsored the local T-ball, blah, blah, blah. We had a lot of our ego.
We're invested in it.
Rightfully so.
Sure.
Emotional and financial investment in this thing.
And pride.
Created. Even though effectively it has no value because no one's going to buy it.
No, but it does maybe to us and to our business person's soul.
Yeah, right. It goes. Thank you. All right. So you keep that when you join EXP. EXP, if you're a team, an individual with your own branding, a brokerage with your own branding, EXP doesn't want you to change it. EXP wants you to keep your brand, keep your colors, keep your logo, keep all of the things that you've created. And all it has to say, and this all depends on your state laws, like where Julie and I sold real estate in Ohio, there was something called prominence, and Tim and Julie.
Well, you still have to comply, but that's the state.
Right.
That's not EXP.
You have to comply with whatever your state regulations are. So, like if you're out in California, brokered by EXP can be in a very small font, and your business logo can remain the same. Going back to the point I was making earlier about Chuck. Now, Chuck hadn't spent any money really on branding. His branding came from the right way, from essentially his success helping other people buy or sell real estate. So that was Chuck's branding. Chuck's branding came from success. In other words, Chuck's branding wasn't branding. Chuck's branding was his reputation, which is honestly the real way.
The best way.
The best way to do it. The only way to do it ultimately. Otherwise, you're constantly spending money. Mm-hmm. But Chuck didn't change anything. Everything stays the same, and everything could stay the same for you. So, guys, you need to have at least consider having an open mind towards EXP Realty. Julie and I certainly wouldn't be the advocates that we are for it if it wasn't something we wholeheartedly believe is the best move for every single real estate agent listening. It does not matter if you're a new agent. I mean, for new agents, they spoil you. It's insane, to be honest with you. You get a mentor program. There's constant training. There's access to your broker. There's access to other agents.
You have education literally 24/7.
Yeah.
You just have to log on and say what you want.
Because it's, online. And so it's not difficult to basically get in contact. And some people say sometimes, well, I'm so used to the traditional model walking into the office. Well, how has that worked out for you in the past year to year and a half with COVID, right? I mean, and the reality of it is you can log in from your phone, from your computer. You can log in anytime, and you're rubbing virtual elbows with other EXP agents, not just in the United States, not just in Canada, but basically all over the world.
Who are all, by the way, invested in your success.
That's right.
Because we're all in this together to one of his incentive points.
I mean, in our group, in Julie and I's group, it's called Libertas, and we have people that are in Colombia, Mexico. We have some people in India, agents in India, for gosh sakes.
I know.
We have agents in Spain. We have agents in certainly Canada. And for those of you who I'm forgetting what countries you're in, forgive me. Australia. Yeah, I think that's. And so the moral of the story, guys, is have an open mind to this. I know all of you do. You're in real estate because you wanted to be independent. You wanted to be free. Libertas means freedom in Latin, thus the name of our revenue share group. We would love the opportunity to earn the right to be your sponsors at EXP. Just text EXP to 47372. Text EXP to 47372. Or you can just go to whylibertas.com and learn more about our group. Watch the 2 videos that are on the top of that website. Chances are that's all it's going to take to basically satisfy your concerns and satisfy your needs with who you'd like to have sponsor you. You can always, if you're ready to join now and you've already watched those videos on Why Libertas, you can text me directly if you need to have a direct conversation. Frankly, I'm looking forward to more conversations while I'm on the road because, we were just on the road for 8 hours, So I'd love the opportunity to talk with some of you. If you're ready to join EXP, we're formally applying for the job of being your sponsor. You can text me directly at 512-758-0206. 512-758-0206. But it's not necessary you talk with me first. You can just watch the videos on Why Libertas. Chances are, I had a guy text me yesterday who basically watched the videos and named you as a sponsor, and he was off to the races. If you go to whylibertas.com, it answers all your questions about EXP. But look, guys, whether you want to join EXP or not, you've got to understand why EXP is really changing all the rules with regards to, the real estate game. And I'll say this as well. The one thing this article doesn't talk about, we got to remember to talk about it tomorrow. He does talk about it a little bit, the iBuyer influence on real estate. But he does not talk about the fact that EXP has an iBuyer that agents can use. Express offers, right? So let's make sure we talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, that's like the icing on the cake. It's funny we have to remind ourselves. That's on top of everything else we've already talked about.
Julie, can you imagine if we had the opportunity when we sold real estate?
I won't even think about it. That would be it.
Where would we be? Honestly, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yes, light years ahead.
But, I don't feel so bad about it because EXP,
Well, it wasn't around
when we were selling real estate.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This program has been a presentation by Tim and Julie Harris, Real Estate Coaching. For more information on our real estate coaching and training programs, visit our website at timandjulieharris.com. Remember to tune in weekdays at noon for upcoming shows, and until next time, thank you for listening to Real Estate Coaching Radio with Tim and Julie Harris.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.